Hey, I have been waiting. I have just been waiting all day for this to start. How is everyone? Let me just get everything set up here. Hopefully, you can see me and hear me well. Give me a thumbs up in the comments if you can hear me and see me okay. I am just super excited to be able to share this with you today because for a very long time, the new year would come and everyone would have all this excitement and all this joy and all this anticipation about the new year. And when I started going through my fertility treatments and realized that another year was coming and I wasn't going to be a mom, I did not have that same excitement. And so I'd feel like this weirdo who was such a Debbie Downer because this new year was coming and I just felt like I didn't have much to celebrate. And so I decided to come on today and share with you some of the most impactful things that I have chosen to do. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how today's call is going to go. So I'm going to take you through an exercise that's going to really help you recognize the breadth of the impact you have on your life and all of the things that are happening around you that just maybe just don't seem like you have much ownership in. And then I'm also going to offer you tools that will help you move into 2023 feeling super grounded and committed to yourself and your future. And this practice is just so important because I lived those years and those New Year's, year ends, and starts of the year just feeling like I was flailing and having a ton of regret and a loss of things to celebrate because I was associating my whole year around my inability to have a child and to become a mom. And so when the year came to a close, the majority of my time I spent tallying up the number of failed cycles I went through, canceled cycles, failed transfers, and I really had a hard time feeling excited about the year. And we just don't need any more of that in our life, ladies. So before we get started, I'd love to just, kind of get a pulse on where you are now. So this is going to be more of an interactive call. So if you're somewhere where you can kind of share right now, I'd love to know, how are you feeling right now? With the new year coming up, tell me, throw in the chat some words that are describing how you feel right now about the year ending or maybe a new one starting. Maybe there's confusion. Maybe you feel a little depleted. Maybe you feel some anxiousness about the year coming to an end or a new year starting. So let me know what's coming up for you. And then as you're throwing some things in the chat, I'd love to just recognize that there's nothing wrong with you if you are feeling these things. Okay, anxious and depressed, yes. I mean, I think we have this assumption that we just need to be the excited one in the room, and that we've gone through these years and these months of searching for our motherhood and searching maybe for a meaning and a purpose that we've associated with motherhood. And we don't give ourselves the time to just really recognize what it is that we're feeling. So you don't have to judge yourself for not feeling the positive things that everyone thinks that you should be feeling, or the positive emotions that you should be having that are supposed to lead you to motherhood. So I just want to recognize that it's okay if you aren't feeling that right now. And then I want to also think about, how you're planning to really start your year off in a way that feels differently, if you want to feel differently. I think some of us, and that was, sort of my story, I never heard anyone talking about how life could feel if you didn't become a mom. I just had this preconceived notion that if you don't become a mom, you always live your life with a missing puzzle piece, and your life just always is good but never great. And so if you're feeling that and wanting more from your life and more for your future and more for your 2023, I am the girl that you want to listen to, because that is my jam. Okay. I spent way too long waiting for somebody to be an example to me. And when I didn't find it, I decided that I needed to create that. So that is why I choose to tell my story. And for so long, I had a lot of shame about my story. I had a lot of secrecy around my infertility journey. And when I decided that I could tell my story from a way that helped me feel more empowered and more energized, that is where my life started to change. And so I'm not saying that you need to choose to do that. Maybe you're not ready for that, and maybe you'll never be ready for that. But just knowing that I exist and I have lived through and felt some of the things that you might be feeling right now should hopefully give you a feeling of maybe some comfort that you're not alone and not so isolated. So today I'm going to teach you 3 things that I do at the end of the year, and 3 things that have really helped me create sort of an appreciation for where I was throughout the year and where I want to go in 2023 or for the year ahead. So I'm going to offer you some things, and hopefully you'll be able to watch I'll be able to repost this, and you can maybe take some time to like pause the video and really take in some of the things that you're hearing me say, because this is some of the most transformative and thoughtful work that I think I can offer when it comes to the end of the year. So I want you to think about what were some of the most powerful things that you experienced in your year. It could be positive, it could be negative, and I really think that oh, numb. I see your comment now. Yes, numb. I get that too. You might be feeling numb. Totally get that. So I want you to think about what are some of the most transformative things that you experienced this year, and without judgment, without classifying them as negative or positive, just some of the things that came up for you. And then from there, what are some of the experiences that brought you positive feelings? And really think about, positive doesn't have to mean necessarily successful. Like maybe it was maneuvering through a heavy experience. Maybe you had a canceled cycle. I know for me, one year, it was right before Christmas, I had a cycle cancel, and the fact that I even like mustered up the energy to celebrate Christmas that year, or go on a trip with my husband that we had planned even though I didn't want to be there. Like for me, that was an accomplishment, an experience that I went through, that the cause of it maybe was negative, but the fact that I still made it through and was here in this human form the next year to talk about it was like something that turned out to be a positive thing that I wanted to celebrate, that I showed up for myself. So think about some of the things that have come to you this year, and tell me where you were this year, where you felt the most peace. Or if you want to put it in the chat, you can put it in the chat too. But think about like where your most zen moments were, where you just sort of felt like life was easy. And maybe it was with a person, maybe it was with a pet. If you know me, you know I am a proud dog mom. And so a lot of my most, I would say, introspective moments of loving and nurturing have been with my dog. And where I've realized, I even talked about this on my podcast recently, that many of the feelings that we want to feel as moms, we think are not available to us. And in a recent episode, I talked about how I had this feeling of like just calmness being with my dog when she came home from the vet and she was sick and wasn't feeling well, and all she wanted was to be near me. And having my presence be a calming force to somebody else, even though I put that in air quotes, it was a dog. It allowed me to see that as a human, I can still experience that feeling of being a nurturing and healing force in another living life. And for so long, I thought because I couldn't become a mom, I would never understand or experience those feelings. So talk about, when you're doing your recap of the year, where you have been or what experiences you have experienced that have given you those moments of peace internally. So we're going to kind of write down some of those things. So if you're taking notes, hopefully, like I said, you'll be able to rewatch this and then really take some time to like develop your thoughts around this. And then many of us, when it comes to the end of the year and I'm offering these things to you, you might be like, you know, Lana, I have no clue. There is nothing that comes to my mind. So I'm going to tell you some of the hacks that I use to go through and jog my memory. So when you're making your list, maybe go through your camera roll and start with January and kind of review all your your photos in your camera roll. And maybe there can be a memory that you forgot you had, or maybe an experience that you didn't remember and didn't have prominence for you when you're working on this exercise. Or maybe go through your calendar. If you're somebody who keeps a calendar at work, maybe some things that came up for you at work that you're really proud of, and some things that you're excited that you accomplished, or maybe a big project or an initiative in your workplace that you created. So my 2 hacks for you are to go through your camera roll and go through your calendar and start to find opportunities for you to point those things out. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is decide, what do you want to do more of in 2023? And a lot of that's going to be informed by that list that you've already in your mind maybe started to create, and decide, like, what of those things felt really good to you that you want to bring more of in your future and in your year ahead. And then I'd love for you to also think, maybe what fears do you have going into 2023? Because I think it's really important for us to understand what it is we are really fearing about our future. And when you can't become a mom and you go through fertility treatments and they don't work out in the way that you thought they would, there's oftentimes this fear of the future because we have no clue what we're going to fill our future with if we can't become moms. And it feels like a heavy burden that we're responsible for filling our time with things that we want to fulfill us and things that we want to create purpose for in our life, or with our life create purpose doing those things. And so we oftentimes have this fear of the future, but I want us to really be honest with ourselves and understanding, like, what is it that I'm fearing? Is it an emotion that you're fearing? Is it an experience? Is it maybe feeling lost? So take some time to really think through that. And then I'm going to tell you from those, kind of list of things. I know I gave you a lot, and so don't breeze over it, because this is really informative to the next part of my practice of choosing a word for the year. Last year was the first year I did this. Last year my word was love, and that word really carried me through the year. So when you choose a word for the year, it's really, I think, informing what you want the next 12 months to be. And last year my life was so full of love, and even for Coco, sorry, she's barking. My life was so full of love, and really very, what's the right word to say? Just, it felt easier because I approached things from a sense of love, and instead of carrying around a lot of the anger and bitterness that I had after I couldn't become a mom, I decided that 2022 I was going to try to love more. And that doesn't mean like going up to people and saying, I love you. But when people offered me words, for example, You know how it is when you meet someone and you tell them that you can't become a mom, and then they tell you you can always adopt. Instead of being angry at people for things like that, I decided that I wanted to love them and say, you know what, they don't know better. They don't know what to say. Maybe they think that them saying those words to me is going to offer me hope. So I'm going to love them for even caring enough to say something to me that they think will help me feel better. And so that word of love really, it stuck through in 2023, in 2022 for me. But this year I decided, I don't know if you can see, my word for this year is ownership. And I jotted down this on my flip chart, and I put around ownership some of the places that I want to have more ownership in my life. And because for me, I felt like when I was going through my fertility treatments, I was just on this sort of this roller coaster ride that I didn't know who the driver was. I was just a passenger in the cart, and I felt like I really just want to have ownership of my future. I want to have ownership of my story. I told you earlier that during my fertility treatments, I was super secretive. I didn't share a lot. I had a lot of shame. So I want to own my infertility story. I want to be able to tell it in my words. If you listened to episode 67 of the So Now What podcast, I just talked about having your story and writing your story in your words. I want to have ownership of my career. I think for a long time, I didn't know that I wanted to work forever. I thought I was going to become a mom and maybe go part-time, maybe stop working for a while and then go back to work later. And I've decided in my career, I want to just really have some ownership over the future of my career goals. Also my relationships with people. My friends with kids, I think there was a lot of dissension, and there was a lot of, what's the right way to say it? I loved them, but I had a lot of dissension with them in our friendship, and I really wanted to have relationships that felt solid again. And so realizing that if I'm not invited to an event with a bunch of other mom friends, it has nothing to do with me, but maybe they're trying to preserve me and preserve my feelings because they don't want to invite me to something that they're going to be talking about changing diapers and baby formula and all these mom things. So maybe practicing some love and some ownership over the friendships that I have. That was another big thing for me. So I'm going to pause there and see what's coming up for you when you hear me say any of this stuff. Does it resonate with you? Does it feel like something that you're interested in maybe applying in your practice for coming to the end of the year? I'm going to continue on and just tell you a little bit about having ownership. I think when we wait forever for our future to be dictated about our outcome of our fertility journey or our motherhood journey, we are constantly in this waiting pattern. So ownership for me is really a way to take back my future and take back my life, because I just wasn't somebody who was used to waiting in the wings of my life. I was always, before my infertility diagnosis, I was always somebody who was very comfortable with taking action. And I was always very excited about what goals I could set for myself and what goals I could achieve and being a leader. And when I couldn't become a mom, I felt super stuck. And so the sense of ownership in my future in 2023 is also something that's huge for me. And I think most foundational, in the infertility community, is taking ownership of my message, because there are so many great resources for women who have infertility now in the social media space. And when I went through my fertility journey, I did not have that same support. Maybe I didn't seek it, but it wasn't as prominent as I see now. And the one thing I really want to take ownership of in 2023 is how I teach my community to thrive and feel fulfilled again. And I think that there's a lot of talk in the fertility community about what not to do and what not to say and what not to be like aware of. And, there's a lot of things that I think keep us behind where we need to be. And I want to take more ownership of how we can be at the forefront of our future and how to take ownership of how we want to feel when we go in certain situations, or how we want to think and believe about ourselves even though we didn't have the children we always dreamed of. And so pick a word. Oh, Angie, your church did that. Health, mental, physical, and financial. I love that. That's great. And so as we talk about like our word for the year, put it somewhere. Like, this is what I do. I put it on a Post-it in my mirror in my bathroom, so it's something that I can always revisit. And come June and July, where I'm not even thinking about the new year, I remember that word. And I'll remember that I want to have ownership, in what ways I want to have ownership. And maybe throughout the year, my definition of ownership is going to change, and maybe reassess myself. And maybe every quarter, I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud here. I'm like, maybe quarterly, you can start to think about what health is. Where are you seeing your growth in your health? Where do you want to do more growth in your health, or whatever your word is for the year? And then the third thing that I think is super important is understanding your roadmap. And it's easy. I mean, we hear that all the time. People have these New Year's resolutions, right? I mean, how many times have we had New Year's resolutions of going to the gym, and by January 20th, you're down to like 2 days at the gym when you had a goal of 5. So understanding like what your roadmap is, like creating a realistic roadmap, and maybe not putting so much pressure on ourselves that we have to feel great all the time. Like maybe deciding that we want to invest in a program, or invest in coaching, or listen to a podcast, or join a group of women who are at your church and don't have children, or maybe it's in one of my communities, doing something like that. But creating a roadmap that is well thought out and really helps you to identify how you're going to achieve that word of the year. Where are you going to go to seek more health? Where am I going to go to seek more ownership? I'm going to move over again. In my career, in my relationships, in my coaching practice, on my podcast, whatever it is. So really understanding where you're going to get that roadmap set, and set it for yourself. And I think that's where most people probably fall off the wagon, if you will, is because we come up with these ideas, but we don't really challenge ourselves to create a path for how we're going to achieve it. So I hope that was helpful for you. And if you don't listen to the podcast, I'm hoping that you have had an opportunity to listen to the So Now What podcast. I come out with it weekly and offer you little tidbits that will maybe help you continue to grow throughout the year, and really like learn that even though we didn't have the children we always dreamed we would, that life can feel good again. And I hope that I'm an example to you that life does not have to feel heavy, and that you don't have to feel like your puzzle always has a couple missing chunks of pieces in it, because I know what that felt like. And I know that that wasn't the type of woman that I was, and the woman that I wanted to live my future being. So just know that if you have a desire to achieve more and be successful again in career, in your relationship, in your personal life, whatever it is, like that is available to you. And if you're interested in learning more about Thrive After Infertility, you might hear me talk about that a lot. It's really a transformative way to get crystal clear on how you want to move forward through your childlessness. And I have 2 offerings. I have a container that's a small group. It's a 12-week container that is just so magical. We just finished our last 12 weeks together, and some of the most amazing friendships were created, and it's for women who have gone through fertility treatments and weren't able to become moms, and know that adoption and egg donor are not options for them. And we really get crystal clear on what it is we want to create with our future. And so the small group has been so transformative for so many. So my next one starts in February. The applications are going to start in January. I purposely keep it small because I want women to know that bond and really like understand one another and hear one another, and not just, show up in a crowded room of, 40 women. And in Thrive After Infertility in the mastermind, we really keep it small so that we can build those friendships and form those bonds. And then I also offer one-on-one coaching services, and that is for somebody who really wants to like get crystal clear on how to create that roadmap. So maybe you know what you want to achieve, but you need a little assistance in getting there. And for me, coaching has been the most transformative way that I have been able to create a life that feels good again and feels light again, and like this future that I can dream about again. For so long, I just felt like I was captive in my life and just sort of not sure how I was going to proceed the next 50 years of my life if I wasn't going to be a mom. And coaching was the greatest way that I could navigate that. So if any of that is of interest to you, please send me a message. Please give me a thumbs up here if that's easier for you. But whatever it is, just know that you are worth the commitment to finding a life that feels good again. And your life does not have to be sad forever. Your life does not need to always feel like it's missing something. And even though it looks so different than you might have thought it was going to look like, it can still feel so good, and you can still be so powerful and be such a driving force in your future. So know that I believe in you, and I love you, and I wish you the happiest of years ahead, because it's what you deserve.